Hello, I'm John, and I have a book tag for you today. It's the Filmtastic February book tag, uh, which is created for the Filmtastic February reading event, which was created by Annie from Obscure Book Adventures, with co-hosts Roy from Roy Reads Anything and Duncan from Back Away from the Donkey. Sorry, there's no light behind me, so I'm having trouble seeing my own writing. Uh, I've been hearing about the Filmtastic February reading event, but I've been a little bit out of the Booktube loop recently, uh, so I'll have to see what all that is about. Sounds really interesting. Kind of been wanting to talk about movies recently, or well, for quite some time, but I've never really known how to segue into it from a book-centered channel. Um, I was tagged by Cliff from Cliff's Dark Gems. Also, I forgot to write that down. I almost forgot to mention it. But I've been tagged by Cliff a few times now, and I don't ever get around to doing tags, but I have a day here where I'm not doing anything, and so I thought I would do this one. Question number one is your first memory of seeing a film at the Pictures/Cinema. Uh, so I actually had to think about this really hard because I started going to the movies when I was very, very young. My grandpa was a big movie fan. My mom, when I was young, she worked at a grocery store and they had a movie rental uh, thing in the store. And that's where she worked. She worked at the movie rental counter. My dad was always taking me to the we just call it the movie store. Uh, but this is more than 25 years ago, and so you had to actually leave your home and go rent a movie. And when I was very young, we were renting cassette tapes, VHS. And when I was a little bit older, DVDs came around, so there was no streaming or anything like that. And so you actually had to go out. You had to go to the movies. You had to go to the movie store. You had to go to the grocery store to get the movie from the rental counter. And they'd give you, like, the kids' movies were in like orange boxes, and the other movies were in like brown boxes, and at Blockbuster they were in blue and white, and you had all these, there was a whole industry around that of independent movie rental stores, and that's all gone. I mean, I would imagine it's all gone. Probably, maybe in some very rural areas it's still around. I don't know. Uh, but anyway, my point is, when you live, so I was born in Arkansas, and I lived there for the first 8 years of my life, so mostly. Uh, and so when you are from rural Arkansas, when you're from a small town in Arkansas, you have to drive a long way to get anywhere. So, uh, like, it was 75 miles to the nearest large city, and then like it was a 2 hour drive. It's 130-mile drive to, well, Little Rock, which is the capital. And it's because the town I lived in was on I-40. And so you could either go west to Fort Smith, or you can go east to Russellville, or you can keep going, and you'll get eventually to like uh, Conway and Little Rock and stuff. And so my point is, when you're from a small town, uh, you go to the movies a lot and you watch a lot of movies. And so that's what we did. So I was always going to the movies when I was young. And it I started going at an age where I don't actually remember the first time I ever went to the movies. My grandpa was always taking me to the movies. My dad was always taking me to the movies. I was always going with my mom. Uh, but so I sat down and I really thought about it, and thought about the movies that I remember going to see. I went to see Gladiator, but that was in 2000. And then I went to see The World Is Not Enough, the James Bond movie, in 1999, I guess. That's when it came out. I went with my grandpa to see that. He's a big James Bond fan. Uh, when I was growing up, by the way, I was not shielded from anything. I was not shielded from any sort of movies. Uh, I saw some really messed up movies by the time I was like 7, 8 years old. I mean, like, some really messed up movies. Uh, but then I thought about, well, okay, The one that I remember is Hard Rain, which is a movie with like Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman. And I remember that really well because it was the first time that I ever walked into a theater and it was bright and sunny outside. And when we came out, it was pitch black dark. Uh, and so it was just a weird transition for me at that age. I'd have been about 5 years old. But the movie that I remember going to, like the first movie I really remember going to and seeing and like watching the whole movie was Titanic. And Titanic came out in 97, and I think I probably would have seen it in early 98. So I would have been 4 going on 5. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting. That was 3.5 hour movie, just about. It was for many, many years the highest grossing movie of all time. I mean, it is Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, Billy Zane, on and on. Uh, I remember that very well. When the Titanic tips up and the guy falls off and falls and hits the rail and everything, and them going through the sinking ship and finding the captain in the room, and uh, I and the ending there, and the big jewel she throws off the ship. 25, 20, well, much longer than that now, isn't it? Time is slipping away from me here. Not just in this video, but in my life. Like I look back and I go, wow, that was 25 years ago. Anyway, and then I'm even wrong about that, and it was longer than that. Okay, number 2. A book about a film can be behind the scenes, a biography or autobiography, or a fiction book that includes film as a main subject. So I don't really read a lot of books about movies. I've read like a lot of short stories where movies are part of them. Like horror stories really like to, horror writers really like to incorporate movies into their books and into their stories. But I really couldn't think of one. Like the only one I could think of was not even a story. I mean, it was a story. Clearly, it had to be a story. It was a screenplay that was made into a TV movie, but I don't remember the name of it, and it doesn't really count for this. So I had to really think about it, and I did buy a while back. It's been a couple of years ago. I bought a biography of the actress Mae West, and it was called Becoming Mae West. And I always meant to read that, and I never did. And I don't even know if I think I showed it about a year ago. And I think at some point I just realized that I probably was never going to read that book. And I'm pretty sure that I took it and sold it with a whole bunch of other books a while back. It looked like a really interesting book. She had a really interesting life. She was an interesting person, Mae West was, but just not really. I'm not really big on biographies, and I'm really not big on biographies of actors and actresses, really. I'm not really captured by anything like that, by actors or acting, or how movies are made, or like musicians. My mom, on the other hand, she loves movies about, or not movies, but she loves books about movies, books about uh, bands, books about actors and actresses, and I'm just kind of indifferent to the whole thing. Um, Question 3: a novelization or tie-in book. So I went with a book that I read last year for Garb August. Wound up being one of my favorite reads of the whole year. It was a novelization of the movie Flatliners by Lenore Fleischer. Um, I really, really, really enjoyed it. So Flatliners is a movie about some medical students. Uh, they are all training to be like surgeons, and one of them is obsessed with death. And in the movie, he's played by Kiefer Sutherland, and he gets these other students together, and he wants them. They're going to stop his heart. He's going to die and see if there is an afterlife and come back. And one by one, they start doing this, but they also start to have like some supernatural goings on. And It's a really good movie. It's got Oliver Platt, Kevin Bacon, one of the Baldwin brothers, um, Julia Roberts, Kiefer Sutherland, as I've already said. Uh, and I liked the movie, and I really liked the book. So uh, it was much better than I expected it to be. But I don't know, that's sort of a subjective thing, and I don't know if anybody else would enjoy it as much as I did. So number 4, a film about writers or writing. So I don't know if this is really a film about writers or writing, but it is a movie called House. It's a horror movie, and I can't remember who stars in that, but it has George Wendt in it, who was Norm on Cheers, and it has, I think, Richard Mole, and he was the bailiff on Night Court, which is one of my favorite TV shows ever. I absolutely love Night Court. Like, that was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. It's about a writer, and it's been a while since I have seen this movie, and I used to watch it a lot when I was a kid. I had it on video and like VCR cassette tape, right? And it's about a man who moves, his aunt has died, and she lived in this big blue Victorian house. And he's a writer, and he moves into this house. His son has gone missing or something like that. And he had this experience in Vietnam, and he moves into this house, and his past starts to haunt him, and he starts to like see ghosts, and like the neighbor lady comes over and she turns into this terrifying creature, and a lot of weird stuff. It was a weird movie. I really want to watch that again. It's been a long time since I've seen that. It's kind of cheating because it's a movie about a writer, not really about writing or the subject of writing, but I remember he was a writer. So, uh, question 5, a film that brings back fond memories. So I didn't write anything down for this one because uh, my recall of movies is not very high. And I mean, when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, Napoleon Dynamite was a really big thing. But I saw it like before all the other kids saw it, and then they found it a few years later. And you had all like the Vote for Pedro shirts and the, your mom goes to college and all that. Um, so I was never part of that crowd, even though I knew the movie as well as they did, knew it before they knew it. Um, I watched The Mummy a lot when I was a kid with Brendan Fraser, and I I love like Happy Gilmore. Happy Gilmore is really, when I was a kid, like the movies that were on all the time, you could turn on the TV just about any time, and Happy Gilmore, Kingpin, uh, with Woody Harrelson and Randy Quaid and Vanessa Angel and Bill Murray would be on like any time, and Dumb and Dumber. Those are the movies that were on all the time when I was a kid, just on TV. You just turn the TV on, they were on. Happy Gilmore, Kingpin, and Dumb and Dumber. And I just love all three of those movies uh, because I watched them over and over when I was really young. Uh, question 6, a film that made you want to read the book. So one night, about 14 or 15 years ago, I used to have satellite TV, and I don't anymore. I haven't in years. But it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I just came upon this Bill Murray movie. And I watched the whole thing from start to finish. It was The Razor's Edge. And that movie was panned, just completely panned. And because Bill Murray was probably too old for the role he was in. But I was just captivated by that movie, and I watched the whole thing, and I just, watching Larry Darrell's story from the war to dealing with like I can't remember. There was like Gray and Isabel, and who was the snob, the arch snob who was played by the guy from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Denholm Elliott, in his gray suit and his green tie and his very sharp dressed man all the time in this movie. And they meet again in Tibet, I think, and just completely I thought that was a really good movie. You know, I just found it at the right time. And anyway, it spurred me on to read the book, The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham. Really good movie. I liked it. Other people don't like it at all. I don't really understand why. Um, I get that Bill Murray was too old for the role. Doesn't bother me. I'm not particularly bothered by those sorts of things. When I was a kid, you would turn on the TV and flip through the channels, and there would be like TV shows where all the high school students were like 35 years old. So I guess it just doesn't really annoy me that much. Uh, okay. Number 7, a book that made you want to watch the film. I forgot to write something down for this. So, a book that made you want to watch the film. I have no idea. I mean, I've probably read some books that were made into films, and I know that I read one a while back. I cannot remember what it was, and somebody said, "Hey, that was made into a movie." I think it was an Elmore Leonard book. I read an Elmore Leonard book a while back. I cannot remember what it was. Um, I didn't care for the book very much, and I was wondering if maybe the movie would be much better. Uh, Number 8, film based on a book or story that have no resemblance to the source. So the one that came to mind immediately is because I read it most recently, which is The Lawnmower Man by Stephen King. So I read Night Shift, or I reread Night Shift about a month ago, and I remember that there was this big like legal battle between Stephen King and the producers of this movie because the movie bears absolutely no resemblance to the story. And it's a weird story. It's not one of King's better stories, to be honest. It's like I finally understood it this last time I read it because it's based on like Greek myths, and I understood it because I finally read the Odyssey, and there are some things from the Lawnmower Man that are in the Odyssey and just in Greek myth in general. But that's the one that I really don't watch very many movies anymore, and I have a hard time remembering movies just in general for some reason. Uh, I'm like I have this terrible problem where if you ask me what movies I like, I'll forget all of them, and I won't be able to remember them. I have the same problem like sometimes if I walk into so I go to Half Price Books every now and then, and they have like CDs and DVDs and things, and I will go over to the CDs, and I don't ever buy CDs anymore. I used to, but I would go in and like forget every band I ever listened to ever. Or I would go into the movies and forget every movie I ever watched. Like it's a weird thing, and I don't understand why that happens to me. Um, but anyway, the Lawnmower Man was my answer for that, and I had to go over here because I wrote down the answers for the next question on a piece of paper that I left over there because I'm super prepared. Okay, so the next number 9 is just to recommend 5 films. So I wanted to recommend a few films that I thought maybe are a little bit more obscure that nobody has ever or that nobody else is likely to talk about really. So I went with let me see, I think I've marked down 6 here. I'll just do all 6. How does that sound? I wrote down 6. Actually, I wrote down more than 6, but I circled the ones I wanted to talk about in red. So the first on this list is The Apostle. Now, I'm not religious, but this movie is about I think he's a Pentecostal preacher in the South. I think he's in Texas, or maybe, I think in Texas, and he's played by Robert Duvall. And he, if you just looked at him, you would think that he was kind of a fraud because he's always very sharply dressed in like a suit, and he's got the big rings and big sunglasses, and his hair is slicked back and everything. And but he really has he's really a man of faith. I mean, he really believes in God. He talks to God. Not like God's not like, he's not having a two-way conversation, but he very much believes in God, and he's always questioning why things are happening. But he's come to this point in his life where um, he's a little bit he's been a little bit seduced by the money, I think, a little bit seduced by the being the man on the stage. He's married to a woman played by Farrah Fawcett, and she is having an affair on him and wants a divorce. And this is just a really big deal because that's not something, he's a preacher, and it's a complete shock to his system because it comes all at once, and he's kind of ostracized from his church. And he uh, he shows up at his kid's baseball game. Like he has two young kids, and he shows up at the baseball game, and Farrah Fawcett is having an affair with I think the man who is coaching their baseball team, and Robert Duvall cracks him upside the skull with a baseball bat, and he winds up dying in the hospital. And so Robert Duvall he goes on the lam. He just takes off, and I think he goes down into like Louisiana. He finds an old abandoned church. He starts it up again. I don't know. I just remember really enjoying that movie, and I don't know if it's a good movie. I just remember thinking it was really an interesting movie. And Robert Duvall is really good in it. I think it's got Billy Bob Thornton in it also for like 2 or 3 minutes. Uh, After that is a movie called Something Wild, starring Jeff Daniels, Melanie Griffith, and Ray Liotta. It's from the mid 80s, I think 86. I saw it one time 14 years ago, and it was much like watching the other movie. I found it in the middle of the night, and I sat down. I watched it from start to finish, and I was just captivated by this movie. It was a great movie. Jeff Daniels plays this guy who works, he's like a white collar office worker. He's eating at a cafe in New York City, and he meets a woman named Lulu, and she basically like seduces him into her car, and they go off on this trip together. They just take off. And Jeff Daniels is like, "Hey, look, I can't go with you. I have a job to do, blah, 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 blah." And they go off, and she takes him to her hometown, and she makes him pretend that he is her husband, and they go to her high school reunion together. And when they are at this reunion, and he's starting to really like her, and he's starting to think that maybe something will come from this. Her ex-husband Ray Liotta shows up, right? And he is just he has been away, right? He's been away for a while, and it turns out that he went to prison, and his wife did not go to prison, but she is kind of trying to get away from all that. And Ray, his name in the movie is Ray also. Ray comes out of prison. He's got like these cowboy boots with the steel tip on them, and this like cut jacket and everything. And he is just like the epitome of like violent cool, right? He's very predatory seeming, but Jeff Daniels is just, he doesn't know what's going on. So he doesn't understand that Ray is dangerous, and Ray just got out of prison. And they go to this gas station, and Ray robs the gas station and punches Jeff Daniels, and they get in the car and drive off, and it's set to Total Control by the Motels. And he drives this great big Cadillac, and the whole movie, Ray Liotta runs off with Melanie Griffith, and it's Jeff Daniels trying to track them down because he's fallen in love with her, and it all comes to a big head at the end. A really good movie. I've been wanting to watch that again for so long, and I cannot find it anywhere. Just clips. The next movie is Fat City, and this is from the 70s. It stars Stacy Keach and a young Jeff Bridges. It's based on a movie, or based on a book by, I think, Leonard Gardner. I haven't read the book. I've wanted to, never found a copy. So Stacy Keach plays this washed up boxer who's way past his prime. He's a drunk now, and he just drinks and goes to the gym. That's all he does. He meets a young guy played by Jeff Bridges. He's an up-and-coming boxer who's also uh, working as a farm laborer for very, very little pay. This takes place in Bakersfield, California. And it is just the story about these two guys, how uh, Stacy Keach is coming back into boxing, but he is past his prime. And then you have Jeff Bridges, who is trying to get into boxing, but it's just not really working out. And he's got all these other things going on. And just a really good movie, really, really interesting movie, because it was filmed, I think it was filmed actually in Bakersfield. And it's kind of a rough, rundown area. This is way back in the 70s. Okay, so the next is also a Jeff Bridges movie. I didn't really realize that when I wrote this down, that Jeff Bridges was in Fat City, but this next is called Fearless. And so Fearless is a movie about a man who is on an airplane, and the airplane breaks down and crashes into a cornfield. And in the middle of this airplane falling out of the sky, Jeff Bridges' character has this, it's hard to explain what happens. It's like an epiphany. He loses all his fear. And while everyone else is panicking and terrified, he is completely serene and calm. His friend was telling him, that Jeff Bridges was going, "Hey, something's wrong with this plane. What is that noise?" And it boo, and it lurches. And his friend is played by the guy who played Q in Star Trek: The Next Generation. And Q is sitting over there going, "Look, it's not a big deal. You're uptight about this meeting. It's nothing. Stop listening to the engine." And then it becomes apparent that this plane is going to crash. And so the guy who, Q over here, becomes very afraid. And Jeff Bridges is not afraid at all. And he looks to the front of the plane, and there's, like an 11 or 12-year-old kid sitting by himself on this flight. And he looks at his friend and says, "I'm going to go sit with that young man. It'll be all right." And he walks down the aisle and is just like looking at everybody who's panicking, and he sits with the kid, and the plane crashes. And so the very beginning of this movie is Jeff Bridges walking out of a cornfield holding a baby with the other kid holding him by the hand. And he is stuck in this fearless position where he just has no fear. And he's not bothered by anything. He's extremely calm all the time. But he's also, he meets Rosie Perez. Rosie Perez was on this, her character was on this airplane too, and her baby died in this flight, and the stewardess wasn't helping her secure the seatbelt wasn't working right, and the stewardess told her just to hold her baby, and he didn't make it, and so she is distraught. And I think Benicio del Toro is in this movie also. I think he plays the husband of Rosie Perez, and somebody is like using a power saw or something out there, and it is about Jeff Bridges connecting with Rosie Perez, and he is trying to get her through this very dark moment in her life, and he gradually starts to lose that fearless quality. Anyway, so the next one is A Dark Song. This is a horror movie. I really enjoyed this one. It's not for everybody, clearly, but it's about a woman whose son was kidnapped and murdered in a ritual sacrifice by a cult, and she wants revenge. So she has she has been reading lots and lots and lots of books. She has found a man who claims to know how to do a ritual, which I think it was something like Abramelin, anyway. But it will take a year and a half. She has to buy a house in a certain area with certain dimensions. They are not allowed to leave this house for a year and a half. There's no electricity. Once they seal it off, they cannot leave. or there will be repercussions. And so it is about this wizard. I mean, I don't know what else to call him. He's not like wizard-like at all. He's actually just some guy who really likes to party and lives a hard life. And they have to be celibate. There are certain things they cannot eat, cannot drink. They have to do this ritual all day, every day for a year and a half. And it is a story of like vengeance and redemption. And it has a really, really interesting. So they're not trying to summon like demons or anything. This is not like black magic. They are actually summoning an angel. And it has a really interesting scene where this angel appears, and I thought that the way that they portrayed the angel was really interesting. Uh, okay, and so the next is just a movie I've really liked for many, many years, and I thought I would just throw it in here. It's Night of the Comet. Uh, I love Night of the Comet. It's kind of like a horror comedy, not kind of like, what's the word? Well, I don't know the word. It's not like horrific, and it's not really, really funny. It's like campy, right? I think that's what they call those movies, campy. And just a lot of fun. It's about two sisters who survive. So there's like a comet that passes by, and it like everybody on Earth is either turned into red dust or they become a zombie that is gradually withering away. And it's about these two sisters. They're like high school students in LA. And so they just go around doing what high school students do. They go to the mall. They, they have like machine guns, and they meet a guy. And these people in the secret facility are searching for them because they want to try to use them to figure out how to save themselves, because they have all been turned into these zombies themselves. Just a lot of fun. I really enjoy that movie. It's a good movie. Anyway, so I guess that is the end. I'm starting to lose my voice yet again. It's very dry in here because of the furnace. Anyway, so that was the Filmtastic February book tag for the Filmtastic February reading event. And I want to thank Cliff for tagging me. I want to thank Annie, Roy, and Duncan for creating the tag and the event and everything. And I want to thank you for watching. This has been a long one, much longer than I thought it would be. And I will see you next time.